Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Reverend Dr. Aija Duelm. I'm a minister of this congregation, and I welcome all of you here. Glad we all got an hour and extra sleep. Hopefully we're all rested more than usually. We are glad you're all here, whether you're joining here in person or virtually. Whether you're here for the first time or the second time, or maybe you've been here longer than you can remember, we're glad you're here today with us. As a community UU church, we're here to seek to examine spiritual questions individually and together with others, educate all ages by promoting ethics, a sense of morality, and the pursuit of personal and shared truth. We strive to serve and work together to make our world a more compassionate, just, and respectful place. I hope you identified these words as coming from your mission statement. This is the first time I used them. It wasn't a trick. But I thought it's a great reminder for us why we are here, why we come together, why we work so many hours for this church, for people here, and why we come to worship together. So whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you're welcome here. Let's begin worship with our call to worship and the words written by Katie Romano Griffin, titled Invoking the Past, Present, and Future. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship together. Today's service is a special one. We celebrated our newest members, and we had a moment of remembrance. This is a tradition of this congregation. Every single year, this congregation chooses to remember not just those who are dear to us, but all who have died. Both of these celebrations and moments of remembrance, they mark special moments in our lives. And I call these moments holy. They're holy times. They mark a transition, a milestone that impacts our life. Just think back to the time when you were a new member at this congregation or another congregation. After a journey of searching, you found a faith community. You had finally found a place where you felt that you belong. And you had hopes that people will accept you the way you are. They will see your gifts and how wonderful you are. And they will welcome you as their own. For some of us, the journey to this community took years, a long time. It may have been a painful journey, but now here it is, a place that brings a promise to be your faith home, where you can grow and flourish, build lasting relationships, and give back. Share your gifts and together with others, do the work to make a world a better place. This transition doesn't happen randomly. Our journey to get to this place is a testimony to the fact that we are all shaped by all of our experiences, by all who have come before us, including our ancestors whom we remember today. In the hymn we sang to celebrate our new members, we sing, "We are our grandmother's prayers, our grandfather's dreamings." We were shaped and molded by those who came before us, maybe learning to be who we are today, or possibly learning who we do not want to be. Our histories are complicated. So we do honor our ancestors. We honor those who have died because we all know someone who has died. One of the most powerful ways humans have tried to make sense of death is through stories. And since we didn't have a story for all ages, I inserted the story in the sermon. This one comes from the Buddhist tradition, from a book called Dhammapada, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Let me know if I didn't. It is a collection of sayings by Buddha. And this particular story came to be referred as the parable of the mustard seed. It's about a woman named Kissa Gotami, and she was a student of the Buddha. The story begins very sadly. Kissa's only child, a very young son, had died. She was devastated, and her grief overtook her whole being. She couldn't accept that he was dead, and so she carried him from neighbor to neighbor, begging for someone to help him, to give him medicine, to bring him back to life. Finally, one of her neighbors told her to go find Buddha and ask Buddha for help. So Kissa found Buddha and pleaded with him to help him bring her son back to life. He listened kindly to her, and this is what he told her. "Go back to your village, dear Kissa. Go and gather mustard seeds from the households in your village that have never been touched by death. From those mustard seeds, I will create a medicine that will help your child." Kissa was relieved, and she went back to her village and did as Buddha had instructed. When she visited her neighbors, they were willing to give her mustard seeds, but not a single one had been untouched by death. "The living are few," they said, "but the dead are many." As the day faded into evening and the dark of night, she was tired and still had no mustard seeds. It was then that she finally realized that death is not something she was facing alone. Death comes to everyone. And with this new understanding, she was able to choose her next actions. She buried her son that she had loved in the forest and returned to Buddha. She confessed that she couldn't find any of the mustard seeds he had told her to collect because every household had been touched by death. While she experienced her own pain losing a child so young, it was pain that many others shared. And in an important way, the pain of losing loved ones and friends to death is the pain that is shared by all humanity. While this doesn't make it easier, it is an understanding that we are not alone in our suffering, but one in it with all others that can help us bear it. Last week, we had All Hallows Eve, All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day, to remind us that death is a part of life. It is in us and around us always. Every year, these traditions puts us in touch with our own mortality. They remind us of the precious gift that each breath brings. And we bring gratitude for all those who came before us. So these particular traditions emerged within the Christian tradition. All Souls' Day was established during early 11th century by Odilo the abbot of Cluny in France. And at that time, the early church already had All Saints' Day to honor martyrs and saints. But then they saw that people were praying for everyone who had died, not just the blessed saints examples. So they decided to add this other day to the church calendar to allow room for this practice. But the practice of remembering people who have died is not unique to Christian tradition. Every culture has honored their dead ones, remembering them through rituals and stories. The Wiccans celebrate the feast of Samhain. Samhain. Okay, I have to work on my pronunciation. People in Mexico and other Latin American countries observe the Day of the Dead. In my culture, in Latvian culture, there's an old pagan tradition that used to be celebrated when Latvians lived in the farmsteads. And according to this mythology, there's a goddess that receives the person's spirit at death and takes it to her kingdom. And after the fall equinox, there's a time period when the gates of the kingdom open and the shadows, or the spirits of the dead, visit the farmsteads to look over of the household, to bring blessings for future life and work. So the head of the household prepared meal for the visitors, offering what they had. The family was not allowed to touch this meal, but they gathered and shared stories about their loved ones who had died, called out their names, expressed gratitude for their help during the year, and voiced hopes for their help during the next coming year. This tradition is about remembering our ancestors, and it reminded me of how I have been connected, where I came from, that there is more beyond me to what I'm connected. My family was still, most of them are still living. I just recently lost my last grandmother to death. But I've always been connected to even beyond them. I did a genogram of 5 generations before my grandparents to see where I am connected in my upbringing. As Unitarian Universalists, we also hold our faith traditions ancestors in high regard. Many of you have put a lot of effort to learn our history and trace our roots to the earliest inklings of our faith. So when we think of Unitarianism, we remember a Unitarian minister, William Ellery Channing, and his loving God. So he is the father of giving the name to Unitarian Christianity, But there is also more than that what Channing did. He proclaimed in a 19th century sermon these words, "I am a living member of the great family of all souls." And he said that when legalized slavery denied the humanity, let alone the soul of millions of our people. But inspired by Channing's message, many Unitarian churches took the name All Souls. The Universalists had already begun to claim this name. They also named their church congregations All Souls, and that had to do with their claim about salvation, universal salvation. We talked about it last week. There's a sermon is on our YouTube channel if you missed it. I did mention that Universalists were so popular in the United States that they were the 6th largest denomination at one point in our history. While these two meanings of all souls that our ancestors have claimed are different, they're widely different understandings, we bring them together to remind us that in life and in death, we are connected. A writer and contemporary Black humanist, Alice Walker, reminds us that acknowledging our ancestors means acknowledging where we come from. She writes, "To acknowledge our ancestors means we are aware that we did not make ourselves, that the line stretches all the way back, perhaps to God or to gods. We remember them because it is an easy thing to forget that we are not the first to suffer, rebel, fight, love, and die. The grace with which we embrace life in spite of pain, the sorrow, is always a measure of what has gone before us." Unquote. Our very own being is connected to those who have been here before us in a line that stretches possibly all the way to the beginning of times. And so we celebrated earlier our connections to our loved ones, many of whose photos are here. There are many names on the leaves. These people touched your life, our lives. They knew us, they taught us. Possibly, sometimes they even hurt us. But we would not be who we are today if not for the presence and now the absence of them. In the counseling theory that is my favorite grief counseling theory, it's a brief collaborative theory. One of the ways that counselors encourage people to stay connected to others is to invite them to think about their loved one that they held very dear. If you would be willing to practice this with me, think of someone that was very dear to you, whom you loved very much, who was always happy to see you, and you were always happy to see them. Think about what they were like. What did they mean to you? And the next question that comes, imagine their feelings and their response. Think about how they felt about you. What would they say to you about you and what you mean to them, what you meant to them? Would they say that their lives were more joyful because you were in them? Would they say they were more happy, their lives were more meaningful because you were part of their lives. In these moments, we bring in gratitude and thanksgiving for those who have come before us that made our lives richer, more meaningful, more filled with more love. And also with gratitude that we ourselves made other people's lives more meaningful. Because of this connection, we are reminded that we are part of this cycle of life and death. We are connected with the sacred thread that Heather Janulis wrote in her poem. It matters that we pay attention to how we live in the world today. So as we leave this place today, the question that I leave you with is, how do you want to be remembered? What stories, attributes, and strengths do you want to be carried forward from your life? What might we want others to continue to learn from our life? Because we are, and will be in the end, cherished. We have our strengths, our stories of survival, of courage, of faith, of hope, and of love. And while we do not know what will happen tomorrow or in the days to come, we can treasure each other's presence, nurture one another's souls. We are a part of this circle of life and death. We are connected with a sacred thread. And all the people said, Amen.